This morning on The Real Story, we're sitting down with the Secretary of the State to get insight into election security and voting reform ahead of an unprecedented primary redo in Bridgeport. What's been learned from the alleged ballot fraud, and how does all of this impact the fast-approaching 2024 primary? But first, we're going over everything you need to know for the upcoming short legislative session, from lawmaker priorities to how you can affect proposed policy. What the next 3 months at the Capitol will look like, we're breaking down that and more ahead on The Real Story. Good morning, and thanks for joining us on The Real Story. I'm Emma Wulfhorst. We're just weeks away from the 2024 legislative session. Committees are already at work, and the Capitol chambers ready to be back in business. But first, let's talk about what you need to know when it comes to how all this works and how to make your voice heard. Our state's legislature is part-time, meaning regular sessions are held in odd-numbered years like last year. That's where lawmakers create and pass the biennial budget. But this February, it's a slightly shorter session, as this is in all even-numbered years. It's set to start February 7th and will adjourn May 8th. So what are legislators aiming to get done in these 3 months, fewer than 100 days? Well, you can expect fewer bills proposed. A lot of things left on the cutting room floor or brought back year after year will get a new life in this short session. And committee chairs are already working to narrow down policy ideas, since the deadline for proposed bills in committee is just 2 days after the session starts. Bill hearings will start before February is even over. But some lawmakers aren't waiting to hear from constituents in committees. With quick deadlines and not as much time to get legislation done, they want to have those conversations now. One special caucus already held an online forum, drawing in more than 600 people, hundreds speaking up about what they need in policy and funding. Take a look here.
The legislators who claim to represent us do not.
Last week, lawmakers from the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus listened to hours of comments from residents about issues impacting them.
Public educations, they need more funding.
Funding for education, a main concern echoed by many speakers.
When the public school had the proper resources, I believe our children have great opportunities to be successful in school and life.
Some people weren't just advocating for public school funding, but for more school options.
You have the right to choose where your kids go to school.
And topics in school also brought up. 2 juniors from Weaver High School spoke about wanting Black and Latino studies incorporated into regular history classes in all Connecticut public schools.
We are history. There shouldn't be a split about whose history is more important to know.
It's offered to all Connecticut public schools, but it's in an elective. And this is something that is good that it got to that point, but the bill needs to be strengthened, and that's something that we're working on.
Outside of education, expanding health insurance and funding childcare programs were also big issues for residents.
I have mothers, single mothers, that called me today and basically crying. But I also have 20 plus staff members that I have to pay and make payroll for.
Constituents also asked for stronger tenant rights and eviction protections.
We live in constant fear of an electrical fire killing our dog or our upstairs neighbors when we aren't home. In response to pushing the issue, our landlord told us that they would waive the penalty for breaking the lease and encouraged us to move out.
Multiple lawmakers say these are all issues they want to see tackled come February and are using these comments to shape the caucus's policy initiatives this legislative session. Well, you can call or email your legislators directly. We know those offices are busy and it can feel hard to be heard. In Connecticut, though, no policy can pass without hearing from residents. All legislative drafts have to have a hearing, but that means it's on constituents to log on or show up and testify. You can do so by heading to the General Assembly's website, clicking into committees, and submitting your thoughts on a bill. Or once hearings are scheduled at the end of February or early March, you You can sign up to speak in person or on Zoom. All proposed policy is always available right on the committee page. And in talking to legislative leadership, they say public comments do make a difference, whether it's actually changing their vote or changing the policy altogether.
Because we really have a system that relies on public input. That's democracy, but it's also the way we've structured our laws here. So if you have an opinion, and whether you agree with me or not, please share it. Very often, people don't bother. They think it doesn't matter, their voice, they're just one person, but it actually really matters. It is hugely helpful.
And you can count on us to keep you up to date on the latest conversations and proposals at the Capitol as we dive into close and continuous coverage for the next 3 months and sit down with your lawmakers. We want to know the questions you have. Connect on social media or email us at newsteam@fox61.com or call the station. We're committed to bringing conversations about what's important to you on this show each Sunday. And you can find everything Real Story, from our weekly segments to our past discussions, online on the free Fox 61 News app or website. Just go to the Real Story tab at the top. And of course, you can always find us streaming and on YouTube. But before this next legislative session can kick off February 7th, Connecticut's largest city has another election to get through. We're talking to Connecticut's election commissioner, Secretary of the State Stephanie Thomas, ahead of Bridgeport's special election. We're diving into security and absentee voting, plus insight into the upcoming 2024 presidential primary. That's next.